Hey there. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful teaching framework called the ART method. It's all about shifting students from just passively listening to actively thinking. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, we have to start with one basic truth about how we all learn. This isn't a new idea. Years ago, the philosopher Mortimer Adler absolutely nailed it. Real learning isn't about a teacher just coring facts into a student's brain. It's an active job that has to happen inside that student's own mind. And that idea is really the core of this whole ART method. But to see why it's so badly needed right now, we first got to look at the problem it's built to solve. I'm sure you've heard this before, right? From a student, a parent, maybe even a colleague. And this one question gets right to the heart of a huge issue in education. Look, if a student can't make sense of the words in a math problem, it doesn't matter how well they know their formulas. Weak reading skills are a roadblock in every single subject. And let's be honest, this problem is only getting worse. In our world of constant scrolling and super short videos, the skill of sitting down for deep, critical reading is really taking a nosedive. This isn't just about English class. It's chipping away at our students' ability to think critically about, everything. So what can we do? Well, luckily, the answer isn't something brand new. It's actually built on a strategy that's been proven for years. So, let's talk about reciprocal teaching, or RT for short. It's a method that's been backed by evidence for decades, and it's designed to boost comprehension using 4 simple but incredibly powerful strategies. Okay, first up, predicting. Now, this is way more than just taking a wild guess. Before they even start reading, students become little detectives. They're looking for clues in the title, the pictures, the first few sentences. So if a chapter is called the carbon cycle, they might predict it's going to talk about plants, air, and maybe pollution. It's a simple step, but it primes the brain for learning. It's like turning on the lights in a room before you walk in. Next, they question. While they're reading, they're not just soaking up information, they're actually interrogating the text. They start asking things like, why did the author choose that specific word, or what's the proof for this claim? This one little habit turns a student from a passive passenger into the actual driver, actively hunting for the big ideas. The third strategy is to clarify, and this one is huge. It teaches kids not to be afraid of getting stuck. When they hit a part that's confusing, a word they don't know, or a really dense sentence, the goal isn't to just skip over it. The goal is to stop and figure it out. They might reread it, look for clues, or ask a teammate for help. It builds this incredible mental toughness, teaching them that being confused is where learning starts, not where it ends. And finally, they summarize. This is really the ultimate check for understanding. Can you take a whole page or a whole chapter and boil it down to the most important parts in your own words? It's not about just listing facts. It's about finding the core message and then explaining it. Honestly, if you can't summarize it, you haven't really learned it. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But does it actually work? Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. In John Hattie's massive visible learning study, which is like the Bible of what works in education, reciprocal teaching was ranked as the 3rd most effective strategy out of almost 50 that were studied. That's not just good, that is absolutely elite. And let's put some hard numbers on that. A big study in New Zealand back in 2014 measured what's called the effect size of RT at 0.68. Now, what does that number even mean? Well, the national average for teaching impact was just 0.35. So yeah, the takeaway is clear. This method can nearly double the learning gains compared to what normally happens in a classroom. The data is just undeniable. So you might be thinking, okay, if RT is so amazing, why mess with it? Great question. Because as powerful as it is, the way it's usually done has one little flaw. A flaw that can let some students fall through the cracks. And that's where this evolution, the active part of RT, comes in to make something great even better. Okay, this right here is the game changer. In a traditional RT group, you might have one kid assigned to be the questioner for the day, and another is the summarizer. The problem? Kids might only get practice in one skill. But with active RT, or ART, no way. Every single student practices every single strategy, every single time, no exceptions. That one little word, active, is the whole revolution. It makes it impossible for anyone to just sit back and hide in the group. It means total engagement is the baseline expectation for every single student. And that's the difference between just doing group work and having real, structured, meaningful collaboration. So let's get practical. What does this actually look like in a real classroom? How does a teacher take all these ideas and turn them into an actual lesson? Well, the process is surprisingly straightforward. It all follows this clear 5-step cycle. First, students work alone, actually writing down their predictions, questions, and so on. Second, they share their ideas one by one in a round robin, so everyone has to speak. Third, the group has to integrate all those ideas and have a real discussion. Fourth, and this is key for accountability, the teacher randomly calls on one student to report out for the whole group. And finally, students reflect on how they did and how their group worked together. And please, remember, this is not just an English class thing. Think about a math class. Students could use art to predict a few different ways to solve a tricky word problem. Or in science, they could use that clarify step to make absolutely sure they understand every variable in an experiment before they even start. Same goes for history. It's perfect for using the question strategy to analyze the bias in a primary source document. Or in social studies, for summarizing the main arguments in a complex news article. These 4 strategies are like a Swiss Army knife for thinking. They work in any subject. And this really gets to the core of it all. ART is so much more than just a reading strategy. When students are doing this day in and day out, they're not just getting better at reading. They're literally building the mental muscles they need for higher order thinking. I mean, look at this direct connection. Predicting? That's really just hypothesis building, right? Questioning is the engine for inquiry and analysis. Clarifying is just real-time problem solving. And summarizing? That is the art of synthesis and clear communication. Art is basically a ladder that helps students climb from just understanding words to doing really sophisticated thinking. Okay, but let's be real for a second. We all know that bringing any new method into a classroom comes with its own set of challenges. It's not a magic wand. Classrooms are complicated, so it's smart to think about the real-world roadblocks and have a plan for them. So what about those real-world problems? Like, what do you do with really quiet students? Or what if the discussions feel kind of shallow? Well, the beauty of the ART framework is that it has answers built right in. For that quiet kid, the write first, then share step is an absolute game changer. It gives them time to get their thoughts together. If discussions are superficial, you can give students sentence starters to help them dig deeper. The point is, the framework isn't rigid. It's designed to be flexible. And that really brings us to the ultimate goal here. Yes, ART definitely helps improve test scores. But honestly, that's just a byproduct. The real prize, the real win, is the kind of students it helps create. Students who can think for themselves, who can work well with others, and who have the tools and the confidence to keep learning for the rest of their lives. So I'll leave you with this final question to chew on, and I think ART gives us a pretty powerful answer. By creating a structure where every student has to think on their own first and then share, it makes their internal thought process visible to everyone. It creates a classroom where every student's voice isn't just invited, it's required, it's valued. And that, right there, might be the most important lesson of all.